Oh, anyway, normal service resumes. Newcastle United 4, Chelsea 1. What an absolute shit show. Anyway, this is the We Talk Chelsea podcast, a podcast with three Chelsea 11 friends. Well, we're Sans one friend because he's got another friend who's going to his birthday dinner instead of joining us on the podcast this week. But we return with Dan, our Newcastle friend. Um, Thanks for joining us on Thursday, Dan, for the preview, and thank you for coming back on. I'm sure it was really difficult for you to agree to come back on this evening and discuss Saturday's game. Um, I'm probably going to speak to Timber first, and then Dan, we can. I just need to build myself up for the absolute shit show that was. Timber. I mean, you called it. You did call the loss straight away, even though depleted injuries and everything along those lines. But you did call it. And did you think it was going to be just from an initial outset? Did you think it was going to be as bad as it actually was?
No.
Okay, great. Thanks. Join next week.
No, I think from the offset, I expected a tough game, but I thought Newcastle would win comfortably in the sense of like we probably wouldn't be able to get through. They'll be very tight defensively, and one of those games where you're sort of struggling to break down the defense. You may get a few chances, you miss a few, and then at the end, the other team comes up and scores and just sort of sees out the game. I thought that would be the game, but for minute 1 to 90, I think we just didn't compete whatsoever, and I think that says it all. I think we are that team that's inconsistently consistent, or consistently inconsistent, should I say? Like I say, soundly beaten, not even a contest, minute 1 to 90. Even at 1-1, I think Newcastle, much better team. We just didn't show up. And again, it just shows that something that we just don't perform at St. James's Park, in my opinion.
We don't. We don't perform at St. James's Park, and we don't perform when Newcastle comes to Stamford Bridge either. So, Dan, I'll throw this across through to you, but we'll speak very initially on this. Good game if you're a Newcastle fan. Severely depleted. You had 12 injuries, first team members. Isak coming back made the difference, scoring early on, and if you're a Newcastle fan, fantastic game. I'm sure if Timber and I if it was the other way around, we'd be happy as Larry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those ones. I think you guys are quite lucky that we are depleted at the moment, because I'd fear for what that scoreline would have been had the full team been there. But yeah, comprehensive. Trippier back at his best, Isak back at his best, Gordon continuing what he's been doing to do, and great to see Lewis Miley coming through and a great ball through for Isak's goal as well.
Yeah, it was a very comprehensive Newcastle performance. I don't think there was a single player on the pitch where you looked at it for Newcastle and thought, you know what, he's underperforming. I think every person stepped up in that game and performed to the best of ability, which is not something that we can say for Chelsea fans. What we'll do is we'll just have a look at the before kickoff thoughts on this one as well. So what we'll do is we'll do what we usually do in this scenarios. We'll share the screen. I'll just bring up the information here now. So when the initial lineup was announced, Timber, I think the one thing that we didn't expect in this scenario was Ugochukwu coming in. I'm assuming that would be just in regards to the two holding midfielders, Caicedo and Enzo, being on international duty. Do you think that was the factor in the choice for Pochettino there?
Yeah, I think obviously with Caicedo's late game, it probably was a fatigue thing, and he thought maybe the change around was a bit too quick. Obviously, they would have had a training session just before the game, so him and his staff would have assessed whether it was best to start him or Ugochukwu, who probably is a bit more fresher, and I suppose add steel to that midfield, which I think we needed this game definitely. So I thought straight away that made sense. I was just a bit worried about our matchup going forward, whether we'd be able to handle that physicality. I thought Enzo probably wouldn't be the best suited for this game either. But everyone else, I suppose, from last game, you pretty much thought, what more could you change from the performance? Although we conceded 4 goals to Man City, we also scored 4 goals. So, you can flip it both ways, if you may.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it that way, it's conceded 8 in 2 games. It's not exactly stellar reviews of the back line for Chelsea at the moment. But Dan, when you saw the initial lineup, I mean, the key thing on that was the return of Alexander Isak into the starting lineup. But how were you concerned initially by Lewis Miley? Obviously, it's a player that we're not too familiar. Is it Lewis Miley?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's a player we're not too familiar with. I think I've seen him appear on the score sheet a couple of times this season, but did you have any concerns going into the game? Like like I said, severely depleted, or did you think, we're probably going to get something here against this inconsistent Chelsea side?
So I think in terms of Lewis Miley, no, absolutely not. I think he is a relatively unknown name to those who don't follow Newcastle. 17 years old, he's come through the youth ranks, and he is being described as our fan base who could be our Foden, as it would be in terms of the building that we're doing. And he is an outstanding talent for his age. The bench was what worried me looking at the names on the bench. I think 3 or 4 goalkeepers, Matt Ritchie, Paul Dummett, and a load of kids come through as well. So the kids have all got, they've got their futures ahead of them. But yeah, no, in terms of the starting lineup, I looked at that and I thought that's as good as we're going to get it at the moment. And it proved to be so.
Yeah, Sterling. When we look at this thing, I think when I looked at the starting lineup, I think an opportunity for Badiashile Temba to come into the fold. We haven't seen much of him since he returned from his injury, and Kukurea has been on form. But when you look at the back line, and we'll discuss it in greater detail when we come to the second half. But it just seems like there was nothing there at all. It felt very, very lackadaisical. It felt very like post-international break where everybody played a 480 minutes and across those 2 games, but not every player did. It was just so poor. It really was unbelievably poor. There's no player that really had a good game. There's not much really we can really dwell on that. It's a standard kind of 4-2-3-1 that we're expecting. The only real surprise was Caicedo not starting, but that was to be expected with Ugochukwu coming in.
Can I just interject, Tom? Actually, I was a little bit surprised that maybe Colwell didn't come in. I thought he might have been. He's usually Pochettino's trump card, and I thought maybe against a team who's notoriously good on set pieces, what he normally tends to do is put Colwell at left back, and also to make us a bit more solid. But I suppose Kukurea has earned his place back with his performances in the last few weeks. However, I did think Colwell would start ahead of Badiashile because, again, we haven't really seen him, have we? I think against Man City, did Badiashile start? Was it Colwell and Silva? It was Disasi and Silva, weren't it?
I think this is his first start since the League Cup. I think he started the League Cup, so he hasn't played very many games.
And we know Colwell has featured pretty much every game bar the Man City game. So again, like I was really surprised that he didn't feature at all. But I suppose we'll talk about the set pieces and stuff like that. But I thought we would probably would end up seeing Levi Colwell at some stage.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're probably going to see Levi Colwell coming against his old Lonely Club next week, but we'll discuss that a little bit later on when it's just you and I and Dan, laughs his way to an early night maybe. Let's have a look at the first half thoughts on this one. So, perfect start really for Newcastle, wasn't it, Dan? That pass through to Alexander Isak. Isak looks like a player that Chelsea have been crying out for. And he's come fortunate. How do you feel fortunate, like that you've got a player of that kind of caliber? Because I think without the investment that you've received, I don't think Isak probably would have considered going to Newcastle at any point. But do you feel fortunate that you've got this player that's a proven goal scorer? I think he's, from what I remember, quite not injury prone, but he's got fitness issues. But whenever he comes in, he kind of seems like he hits the ground running as soon as he comes into the team. Is that a fair assessment, or am I completely off base there?
No, that's exactly spot on. Absolutely very fortunate to have a player like Isak in our squad. He's exactly what we've needed for some time as well. We've got Wilson as well. Obviously, he knows where the back of the net is, but I think with Isak, he just brings that next level of quality. He's so good with the ball at his feet. He can play out wide. He can play through the middle. And he knows where the back of the net is. It's interesting when we were first taken over. he was the first name I had written down as who I wanted to bring in. I watched him a lot with Dortmund, and then watched him obviously through Sociedad as well. So he's absolutely fantastic, and it's great to see him. It's great to see him come through. He's a fantastic player, and absolutely feel very lucky to have the likes of him and Bruno as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of plaudits going to Kieran Trippier for his performance in the game itself, minus that shocking dive that he did in the second half. One thing that wasn't shown on Match of the Day, but it looked like he'd been shot. Honestly, it was like, oh. Anyway, but a player that I wanted to touch upon, he almost signed for Chelsea under Thomas Tuchel, but Anthony Gordon. I think Timber. I think when Tuchel was at Chelsea and Rip must be signing Anthony Gordon, he was interested. I don't think any of us really wanted Anthony Gordon, did we? I think based on what we were seeing, I mean, you feel free to correct me, but I didn't see it. I didn't understand it. But in this game, he was absolutely phenomenal, getting a goal, getting an assist as well, and he had Reece James' number. He really, really did. He had Reece James' number in that game, didn't he?
Yeah, no, I think it's just mainly because I think his play style is a bit reminiscent of Mason Mount. I think he's got a bit more pace to his game than Mason Mount, a bit more final product than Mason Mount. But it's felt very similar to that. And obviously at the time we had Mason Mount, Kai Havertz, players of similar ilk who like to maybe drift off the sides and come into the middle. So maybe it was the case of we had Pulisic, Callum Hudson-Odoi, and a few others. So I think the timing of us being linked to him probably didn't help. That didn't probably diminish his quality. And obviously we also had a signing from Everton, Ross Barkley, who didn't translate well to Chelsea at all. So I could see why people had, had doubts about him actually joining Chelsea. However, what he showed yesterday was like you said, he had Reece James on toast, and yeah, he just proved it. Although you may not have a plethora of skills or sort of flashy moments, you can still be very effective in the final third, and that's exactly what he was.
Yeah, and when we look at we got to try and focus on one piece of the silver lining in the shit show that was Saturday afternoon for Chelsea fan Dan. Again, I know you can't relate to this, but we have to look at this Raheem Sterling. Raheem Sterling, he's kind of finding a little bit of consistency once again, and he looks like the cameras were frequently cutting towards Raheem Sterling, and we were seeing him kind of like adopting a more leadership-based role, something that was missing from a Reece James from Saturday, which we'll talk about again a little bit later on. But Raheem Sterling, we have to think, where did that come from? That free kick, like I didn't realize he had that in his locker. Not necessarily renowned for his free kicks, but that was absolutely phenomenal. Had Nick Pope rooted to the spot. I firmly didn't expect that to go into the back of the net at all. Did you?
No, I think you see it times over again. It was never something you expected to go flying. It depends which Sterling's going to turn up. You either get the one who's going to put it straight into Rose Ed, but I honestly thought he's had an absolute stormer against us, and that free kick was special.
Yeah, I mean, Dan, when you were looking at the starting lineup for Chelsea, was there any players that you think, okay, I'm worried about this person? No, the starting. Was it Cole Palmer? Was it Sterling? Nicholas Jackson?
Well, I think both Palmer and Sterling. I think with Jackson, I thought he looked incredible in pre-season, and then from my perspective, he seemed to drop off a little bit until he scored that hat-trick. But for me, I was just glad not to see Nkunku there. But Sterling and Palmer, you look at them. Palmer's been in fantastic form recently, and Sterling always turns up against us for some bizarre reason. We seem to be the team he loves to play against. And I just thought, I personally thought Trippier and Livramento were going to play on the opposite sides. So Trippier would try and sort of be there to protect against Palmer. But thankfully he was on Sterling's side, because I do fear that if we had it the other way around, he may have had a bit more of a run against us.
Yeah, I was quite surprised at that, actually. I just wanted to say that Livramento, he was excellent for you guys as well on the weekend.
Yeah.
I thought if he went one-on-one against Cucurella, and the fact that Gordon kept Reece James at bay. I thought maybe he could have gotten a bit more forward if he wanted to, because, like I say, that right hand side of Chelsea, I think you guys had the complete beating of. Palmer was non-existent.
He was that's sorry, go on, Tim.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. Ugochukwu, non-existent again. I think Thiago Silva had an absolute mare himself. I think all that right-hand side, and as you saw the pockets of space Isak was able to pick up, Badiashile or Silva really couldn't get close to him. Because I think what you really have there with Isak, what we don't have with Jackson, is someone who's got a very crisp first touch, and he can sort of sneak off into space, take that really crisp first touch, and sort of create his own chance if he needs to be. Whereas I don't think Nicholas Jackson quite understands that. I know Isak has played on the wing and he's played as a striker. I think maybe with time that can come with Nicholas Jackson, but I think it also just shows like the difference in quality right now that you have there. But I also wanted to get your thoughts on how you thought Almiron played in the first half.
See, Almiron for me is Mr. Consistent. He just does. He either will be at that level where he does exactly what's needed of him. You know, he is very much a straight line runner in that he doesn't often try and turn and take players on. He will run in a straight line, beat them with pace, and try and get either that ball across or he'll hit that cross goal shot that he's been very successful with over the last few years. I thought he played really well. I thought Cucurella had a little bit of trouble with him, to be honest. And I do think if he'd kept going a little bit more at him, we could well have seen both fullbacks sent off at one point as well. But I thought he had a solid game. I don't think it was his best game for us, but he definitely put in a great performance. But it's almost that we're kind of used to seeing him play like that now.
Yeah. I think your crowd gets really excited every time you sort of win the ball back. I don't think I've ever really seen a crowd like it in England, where you cheer every tackle or just interception as a goal, really, and it sort of lifts up the players like none before. It's not like this myth of Anfield where they say they sing for 90 minutes. Of course not, but you can really feel it at Newcastle, where every sort of motion of the ball really counts, and it's kind of a testament to yourselves, like I say, with what Eddie Howe has done. He's built a really strong. He understands the Premier League, so he's built you guys as a really strong team, but a good technical team as well through transitions, and that's the thing I think we have missed out in part of our squad building. As you can see, we were completely bullied and dominated. I've seen many times Ugochukwu try win the ball back. As soon as he wins the ball back, another Newcastle player comes across and then intercepts the ball off him. And even Sterling, we started making silly fouls in the first half, trying to sort of compete with you, like man for man sort of thing, where we thought, if we can't bully them physically, maybe let's play the dirty game. But to your advantage, you managed to win the fouls when it counted. And I think that comes down to a lack of experience from us, which is what I've been saying to Tom, where we don't know how to manage a game. We don't know how to take the sting out of the game, or sort of, use our dirty tactics on other, maybe start falling down every simple foul or anytime you guys put pressure on us. But we instead decide, if you're going to punch me, I'm going to punch you back 2 times as hard. And it sort of creates that 50-50 sort of game. And I think we played right into your hands there because we weren't up for the fight. I think this international break showed that, we've been away for a long time and we're still not there as a team to be like, we can just turn it on when we want to. I don't know if you agree with anything I said, Tom.
Yeah, we're just shit. We're not very good. It's incredibly frustrating, and I think the thing that I've discussed previously is it doesn't matter. We can do wholesale changes of this team. You look at it, the players that we've brought in the last 2 years. Jackson, Palmer, Ugochukwu, Fernandes, Sterling. Cucurella, Badiashile, Sanchez, and it's the same. It's the absolute same. The only difference that we have experience, I think this is the first time where we've played against a team that we've done very badly against that really pushed up against us. Usually teams that they beat us, they go fully on the low block. And I was quite surprised. I think I mentioned it on the preview on Thursday, that I fully expected Newcastle, given their depleted side in terms of injuries, I fully expected, okay, Eddie Howe's going to low block, try and win this on the counter, because we've seen it time and time again. Chelsea, that's their undoing. It is completely their undoing. But this time, it reminded me, and it was reminiscent of when Newcastle played PSG. That they put the pressure from the get-go, and they made sure that the pressure stayed up, and they kept running. They put the pressure on the back line, stopping Chelsea playing out from the back, with the way that Chelsea have been able to do. We've kind of got better at it in the last few games, from what I can see. And the one thing I will say, that when you guys were talking, was that I was thinking at St James's Park, like, it's fun. I've not been. I'd love to go. I've been to Newcastle, but I've not been to St James's Park. But that PSG game, that atmosphere, that makes a difference. It really, really does. And for a fact that when it comes back to the second game that we play against Newcastle this year in the Carabao Cup quarter final, Stamford Bridge is going to be nowhere near that level of intent. Stamford Bridge is going to be nowhere near that atmosphere. The crowd aren't going to get behind the team like the Geordies do for Newcastle, and I think that's the thing that we are really, 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 really lacking. But I think it's an identity crisis that we have, and we're still talking about the same thing, season after season after season. Like, you see glimmers of what we could be, but it's just completely frustrating because we're so inconsistent. Do you know what I mean? Like, we got excited. Yes, we won 4-4. Do you know what I mean? We won 4-4 against Man City because nobody expected us to get a point from that game. We played well, but we did still concede 4 goals. That should be a cause for concern. And I probably had my happy hat on, during the previous, because I predicted we were going to win this game 2-0. And I got that completely wrong. Everybody else said that it was going to be a loss. It's frustrating. It really, really is. And that first half, I thought, okay, we're going into the half time, 1-1. That's the thing we can do. We can work with that 1-1. Let's see what happens. We have strength in depth really on the bench. In theory, we've got a better bench, but it only got massively worse, didn't it? It got, just when you think Chelsea can't get any worse, we go and play the worst half of football I've seen us play this season. It was atrocious. Dan, I'll throw it back to you. Was it Chelsea just being atrocious, or was it being Newcastle being absolutely ruthless and clinical?
I think there's a little bit of both there. We essentially bounced back from what was a shocking performance against Bournemouth, and I think we were out for blood. I think essentially, there was no stopping us on Saturday. I think we once we got one, I think I was speaking to Tim throughout the game, and I think as you could see, the second we got that second goal, that was it. It was going to be a steamroller from there, because once that's the huge difference with us under Eddie Howe to what it is under a lot of other people, is that we don't stop. We won't go 2-1 up and then just sit and be like, okay, come at us now. We're going to try and hold the game off. We will keep going and keep going and keep going, and we've now got the talent to put the ball in the back of the net as well. So I think it was that, it was a very poor performance from Chelsea. I'm not going to sugarcoat that, and we took advantage of it.
Yeah. I mean, Timber, it's just, when you look at that second half, have you seen Chelsea play as bad as they did all season in that game? Have we played that? Has there been times? I know we've lost games, but is it that bad? Was it worse when we played against Brentford?
Maybe West Ham away. I can think of where we were that bad, or maybe Arsenal at home where we gave it away as well, where the second half was really bad, like really, really bad. But in terms of a 90-minute performance, I think not as bad as last season. I don't think I've seen a performance as bad as that since last season. But West Ham away West Ham away, I think we played quite well until that Enzo missed that penalty. I think we were pretty good until Enzo missed that penalty. But yeah, in terms of this season, it definitely, I think, is the worst performance. And as you saw, like I say, with the frustrating fouls we just kept giving away, it was just pure frustration. And like I say, we received, what was it, 3 or 4 yellow cards none of them were actually fouls. They're all disciplinary issues, which is what
Yeah.
one of the titles of
It
the issue I wanted to talk about. Like, I wanted to
It
get
was-
your thoughts first before I chime in on it. But what do you think about like the disciplinary issues at the moment?
It's stupid because it's petulant. It's avoidable. Do you know what I mean? It's a game that you're going down, and especially when you got the captain, Reece James, getting a yellow for kicking the ball away, and then his touch was shocking for that second foul on Anthony Gordon. He made a mistake
Yeah.
a bit, but Anthony Gordon's got rapid pace, and I think that's an example of Reece James potentially losing a step a little bit in terms of his pace, if that makes sense, Tim, because I think he struggled to get back a lot of the time. When he got forward, I think he struggled to get back a lot of it. And I think, do you think there's an element of worry or doubt that we've seen in players like Callum Hudson-Odoi at Chelsea, when he did his Achilles, he's scared to kind of run at full pace in case he did it again. Do you think there's an element of that with Reece James? Because it was stupid. Like he's got the pace to get back and cause, the strength to cause some issues for Anthony Gordon. It was completely ludicrous. And I've seen some comments from fans online saying, "Oh, it was never a yellow," but it was. He had his hands on him. Was it soft? Yes, it was soft, but it's a clear yellow. He stopped a chance from Anthony Gordon. He should have got sent off. But the disciplinary stuff, it's not good. It's avoidable because it puts you on the back foot. It prevents you making that tactical foul on the Newcastle counter attack. Not that there were very many counter attacks because it was just all go, but it's perfectly avoidable. And I think Pochettino needs to look at it. I think he had a word with Jackson. I'm surprised Jackson didn't get one, let's face it. But even Jackson, he had 5 yellow cards early on in the first few games, and he was banned for a game. And then Pochettino had words with him. But I fully expect Pochettino to be going round and speaking to all of them, getting a yellow. And even Levi Colwell came on 15 minutes left. He got a yellow as well. It's perfectly avoidable situations for stupid, petulant nonsense. Like if it's a foul when you're trying to win the ball and you're a little bit late, I get it. But kicking the ball away, it's pointless. And I've seen Chelsea
arguing with the referee and
Yeah,
things
I've
like
seen
that. Yeah,
Chelsea fans get some Chelsea. I'll say some Chelsea fans, not all of them, but some Chelsea fans are saying that Simon Hoop had a bad performance. I thought he was great. I genuinely thought he had a really, really good game. I couldn't fault the refereeing decision at all because I think each foul, the only thing that I thought potentially was a little soft and it went in our favour was the Kieran Trippier foul on Sterling.
okay.
But feel free to disagree with me. But I thought it's perfectly avoidable, isn't it?
Yeah, and like you say, a lot of those bookable offences, like I say, this season, they've just been due to silly stuff. Like you say, Jackson giving away needless fouls. Like you say, he's already been told by Pochettino, you're gonna have to do more sprints because you're basically giving away silly fouls and silly yellow cards that are not needed. So you're going to be suspended for a game, and the thing is that always comes from the manager. And guess what? Well, the manager wasn't there because of his disciplinary issues. So I guess again he's setting the example, I suppose. But I remember under Pochettino and the Spurs when they completely capitulated at Stamford Bridge when they had 11 yellow cards or whatever it was. Didn't have a player sent off somehow because I can't remember who was the referee that day. Was it Clattenburg?
I don't know. Charlie's not on, so he's the one that does. I can't.
Yeah, he didn't want to send a player off that day, and well,
yes, it was.
Yeah. Fortunate for them, but it sort of showed their disciplinary issues at that time, and it just sort of earmarked to me on the weekend when I was just thinking about it. I was like, well, that was under Pochettino as well. I don't know if it's a sort of thing where he can't sort of get control of his squad to just give away, dirty fouls. If you see the best teams do it, like Man City, Arsenal, what they do is they foul you so high up the pitch.
Yeah,
they foul you so high up the pitch, and 2 or 3 of them will congregate together and sort of group foul you in a sense. So the referee doesn't make a quick decision to be like, oh, you're the one who's. You see Bernardo Silva so many times he does it as well. It'll sometimes come behind you, whatever, do a little nibble. Someone else will come across to try win the ball, and because of the advantage or whatever, it will be given as a foul. Stop the play. They'll stand in front of the ball, and that's how you sort of get your team back into shape and not put yourself under so much pressure. So I think that sort of group and collective fouling is something we need to get better at and do it way higher up the pitch where we give ourselves a good chance. Because as you've seen with that second goal, I wanted to say is how bad we are from set pieces as well.
Awful. We're atrocious. We've not been good at set pieces since. Was the set piece coach Anthony Gordon?
Yeah,
Was he the set piece
Anthony
coach?
Barry.
That's the one. Sorry, I'm getting confused. He played Newcastle. Anthony Barry. Yeah, I think he was a set piece coach for Chelsea. I did too. But no, he went on gardening league. No, we're so poor, even attacking and defending.
Tom, your mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better. Sorry.
Hell yeah. But we've been so poor when it comes to attacking and defending on set pieces. It's atrocious, and it plays the amount of stupid fouls that we give in areas that's going to be exploited. And you look at the players, the capability of the Newcastle players capable of scoring headers. Fabian Schär, Jamal Lascelles who scored the goal, Alexander Isak, Joelinton, all giants. They're all like 6'1", 6'2". They're all people that can tower over. And the only players really that we've got of any substantial height is, when you look at that, Badiashile and Jackson, but Jackson's atrocious in the air. So, it played right into hands, and it's just a naivety that, yes, whilst you have like a young squad, but these are pros. Like, we should expect them to be doing it better than what you and I could do on a Sunday afternoon in Redditch. Do you know what I mean? So, it's crazy. But as soon as that Lascelles goal came in, I think I said as well before we started the podcast, I think Joelinton, that mistake from Thiago Silva, he doesn't make them often, but when he does, it's usually calamitous. Like, I think I remember the game when we played, was it West Brom, and he made a mistake there in one of his first few games, and it was our downfall that day. We got beaten quite heavily by West Brom. And it happened again. Joelinton pounced on it, and the commentator in the first half said, Joelinton yet to score this season for Newcastle. And I went, oh, well, that means he's going to score this afternoon, because charity FC that we are, if you're on a losing run, if you haven't scored in as many games, the team that you want to play in this scenario is Chelsea. I think the one thing I want to say as well, Tem, is, I'm a big advocate of Thiago Silva. I am. He is 39 years old. I think is Pochettino. Does he have to start looking at this now and really considering it? Okay, I need to think long-term centre backs and actually giving some minutes to players that are going to be there next season, because I don't think Thiago Silva is going to be there next season. Is the time now to consider, okay, well, what's going to be my centre back pairing? Is it Disasi and Badiashile? Is it Disasi and Colwell? And then starting to kind of bring these players in and giving these players the actual opportunity to play what they're going to be playing next season.
It's such a tough question, because I think at the moment we really need points, and when you really need points, you need experience. I was watching a podcast with Mikel, and he said that in times of need you normally rely on your experienced players. And also managers end up relying on experienced players, because they've been through situations, they know what it is to sort of stand up and be counted. And I think it's something I mentioned in the preview of, like, this is the sort of game you need to be stand up and be counted. And I suppose in a way Thiago Silva was stand up and counted in terms in the wrong way, but I think through tough periods, the strongest characters often come out to rise above hate or rise above any sort of thing. But I think it may be time to maybe drop him for 1 or 2 games and see what the side looks like. Maybe push slightly further up. Maybe you find a new partner somewhere, or a new partnership that seems to blend well, because we haven't seen like Cole and Badiashile play together. I know 2 left-footed centre backs isn't often used anywhere amongst any big clubs, but I would like to see it.
But to me, that's just crazy. Do you know what I think? Like, 2 left-footed centre backs can't play, but you can easily play 2 right-footed centre backs.
Yeah.
Dumb, right?
I'm not sure on the science on that. I'm not clued up enough to to begin to think why that's not really ever been tried and trusted, sort of thing. But it kind of brings me back to a point I wanted to throw to Dan. It was like about Jamal Lascelles. He's been in. I'm not sure exactly how long he's been at Newcastle. If you wouldn't mind reminding me, but he seems to have been there for a very long time, and I'm surprised he's still a Newcastle centre back. To be honest, but I wanted you to speak on how well you think he's done over the last few years, and especially and Joelinton as well, because obviously he used to be one of your strikers, and he was a laughing stock because I think you bought him for 40 million, and he didn't seem to be able to score a single goal, and he's completely transformed his game into a central midfielder now, and he just doesn't look out of place.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we brought Lascelles in 2015, or it might have been in the January of that 15-16 season. Mm-hmm. I must admit, I'll be the first person to say as well, I'm surprised that we still have Lascelles. I thought once we were taking over, that would be the end of him. And I thought, once Botman and Shaw got their partnership going, I thought, even if there was an injury, I thought you would see Dan Burn come in at centre half, and you would see somebody else come in at the left. We've got the likes of Matt Target, and then obviously we've got the new guys in Hall and Livramento that can play left back as well. As well as a couple of the old people who are still hanging on in Emil Kraft and people like that who, forget are still part of the squad. But Lascelles, what I will say, he has come back into the team and he's been absolutely colossal for us at the back. He's almost been, as we refer to it, Eddie Howe in the same way that, like you say, Joelinton has as well. Joelinton, like quite rightly as he said, came in from Hoffenheim as a centre forward. We paid £40 million for a Brazilian goal scorer. Your first thought is he's gonna get hundreds of goals. He's quality. He's Brazilian. It didn't quite work out for him. Being coached by Steve Bruce very rarely works out well for players. And then I honestly thought his career was dead and buried with us. I thought it was. Howe's come in, gone, actually, you'd be great in the middle. You've got a great work ethic. You work hard. You're strong. Stuck him in the middle of the park, and I don't know. It's some kind of Clarence Seedorf reincarnation that's come through him. He's an absolute machine now, and he never stops. Although I was quite interested to see, I did think there was going to be a bit of a scuffle between him and Enzo Fernandez at one point as well, though, which there only really would have been one winner out of that. But no, he's been absolutely fantastic. But he's the kind of player who he gets booked very, very regularly. You can almost guarantee he's going to get a book in a game, but he does it for the right reasons. It's not like you were saying. We've got some players who can sort of, have that little bit of a gripe. They'll kick the ball away, but he does it because he's putting that tackle in for passion and trying to win a ball back. And he comes through late and he might kick someone in the next week, but he does it because he's, you can see the care that he's got for the team. And, it's great to see, these players who had no prospects coming through and realistically have no right playing in the Champions League until their recent form. It's great to see them actually, stepping up to that level.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. It's just amazing to me, like the levels that I think you guys have got to with the players you have. It's kind of like under Leicester, where they sort of elevated their game to a level where they just kept it consistent, and a lot of teams just ended up snatching them away from them. But I think you're in a different position now, where you're owned by the Saudi owners, so all you can do really is invest more into the squad, and eventually some of those players may not be there in 2 or 3 years, but performing at Champions League level, there's no really higher level you can go to, and you can see now your squad's filling out with international players. So again, it shows like you deserve to be right at the top level, the very, very top. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on where do you think Newcastle go from here now?
I think it's a really tough one. I think if we're talking just this season, I think if we can get top 5, top 6, I think that'll be a really good season for us. We've got an extra competition to deal with this year. I think this game tomorrow against PSG is going to be quite a season-defining game. Either we get a positive result and we can potentially stay in the Champions League and kick on from there, because the last game we have is Milan at St James's, which is it's going to be rocking, like you said it was against PSG. And And if we do go through into the Champions League, I think our league form will take a bit of a dip. But I think really the aim's got to be, trying to get into that top four again. There's a lot of teams challenging for that this year. I think it's the most open top sort of 8, 9 in the table. I've seen it for quite a long time. I think everybody can beat everybody on any given day this season. So I think, trying to push as high as we can, aim for that top four. But I think everybody would sacrifice top four, finishing 5th or 6th if we can win something. If we can win something, I'd build a statue of Eddie Howe and Jason Tyndall myself. Absolutely would. It's been too long. So I think that's got to be where we go this year. And then you've got to look at that. They say within 5 years from now they want to be challenging for the league and for Champions League titles. So you kind of got to just go with that hope and belief.
But Dan, do you not have? If you do get through, you've got another window. You've got the January transfer window to bring players to add that strength and depth as well. It's not like resources are very small. You've got very deep pockets right now and very long arms with owners. We're very willing to pull that money out the pocket and spend it wisely as well. That's the key thing. Spend it wisely, which something we're not currently used to at the moment. What about in this scenario? Say, for example, you don't qualify, but you finish third and you go into the Europa League. And you mentioned it here, if you don't stay in the Champions League, you expect your league form to take a dip. But, surely you do that for a Europa League win.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, literally to any trophy, Carabao Cup, FA Cup, anything that we're still in. I think the most important thing is now we've got a team that wants to win anything that they're in, be it a game, be it a friendly, whatever it may be. We don't tend to go out and play, what people class as a weekend side or anything like that. But if we can go and win something this year, it will probably eclipse last season.
Yeah. Okay. I was just going to ask you: would you take a Europa League over finishing the top four?
As in winning the Europa League?
Yeah,
100%.
100%.
That gets us into the Champions League and the trophy. So
would you take a Europa League and finish 18th?
No,
it's not going to happen.
I was going to say even that. I don't even know if that's possible now. Not 18th. I think, anywhere which gets us back into Europe next season, personally, I don't speak on behalf of the whole fan base, but I would take, getting into the Conference League next year and winning a Europa League or winning an FA Cup. I think, if we could win something, that's all we want to see. That's the big dream from all Newcastle fans.
Yeah, I don't think, Tim, I don't think you disagree. I don't think Newcastle are a very long way away from winning something. Let's face it. I think they're very, very close to winning a trophy. I'd wish you luck, but I'm not going to because we've got to play in a few weeks' time. But Dan, I greatly appreciate you for joining us this evening and giving up your time. I wish you all the best for the rest of the season. Actually, I don't. I'd be lying if I said I did. But I wish you well in the Champions League. I do wish you well in that because it's always good to see an English team do well in the Champions League that isn't named Liverpool. But I appreciate you, Dan. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll speak to you very, very soon. Tem, we need to discuss Brighton.
All right. See you later, Dan.
Cheers, guys. Have a good one. Thank you.
Yeah. Brighton.
It's tricky. We're now sans Reece James, very good, man on like.
Yeah. But obviously, I think captains deliver pre-team talks and stuff like that. Although it's pretty much shared out as from what I understand from podcasts. Some certain squads they change around who does the pre-team talks. But if someone wants to get a message across clearly to everyone, I don't know if he's the right man. Again, I don't know if that was Reece James either because. From the outside looking in, he just looks like a player that sort of stands up to be counted when he plays. I'm not sure he's quite a vocal leader, and it's something I suppose Charlie mentioned where, before we signed any of our players, he wanted Jordan Henderson, Pickford for, that sort of captaincy role, and I'm not sure to what length Gallagher has taken that mount on because as you've seen, he's been Chelsea captain a few times this season. So really, again, I think it starts at the top. It starts from the manager right down to the players that need to be, to be the senior players. Raheem Sterling, for one. I don't think he's been good enough. Again, like I say, the best version of Raheem Sterling is inconsistently consistent. So they all need a bit of help to bring each other's games up. And I think we're a team full of individuals, but not a good collective team at the moment. And like I say, you look at City, they don't have necessarily one captain. I think it's 11 captains, whereas we don't seem to have any captains. So yeah, I think that captaincy issue needs to be looked at.
And the captaincy issue needs to be looked at. I get it, but where do you need to? Where does it go? Because for the benefit of people that haven't seen, I think are we closing in on a deal for another young midfielder, £25 million or something along those lines. But it's another central midfielder in a position that's all overstacked, isn't it?
Yeah. According to reports, we've signed a Brazilian midfielder for 25 million or 20 million pounds, as I should say. And like I say, I think that brings up our spending of midfielders in like the last 12 months to nearly 300 million pounds. Because if you look at Enzo and Caicedo together, that's 220 million pounds. Add Lavia on, that's 260, 280 odd million. Yeah. Casadei, Uguachuku, and now this supposed Brazilian player.
15 million.
Yeah, Gabriel Moscardo, 20 million pounds apparently. Or I've just read here that there's nothing agreed yet, but it looks like it's heading that way. But like I say, if we do end up spending that money, although we've spent quite a lot, what does it say about our club and where are we sort of heading towards? Are we becoming Borussia Dortmund? Because I understand that we want to invest in a lot of young players before they make it big elsewhere, but we haven't exactly set up a system for these players to actually come through and process them through, if you know what I mean. It's like we've bought all the stock but nowhere to put it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, and we're still severely lacking in the situation when it comes to a striker. Again, Groundhog Day. The striker situation is ridiculous. Like, surely we should be like Chelsea are trying to get this striker, Chelsea are trying to get this striker, but no, it's positions that are already overstocked. And if I hear rumours that we're looking to sign another winger again, I'll be fuming because we don't need players in this position. Like, we've got so many players that are capable, but they're not getting the opportunities they need or to get consistent game time, to get minutes, to improve and get better. We'll just see what we saw with, Mohamed Salah that came to Chelsea and then disappeared and went to Roma and then excelled elsewhere because he got game time. We'll see the same for Kevin De Bruyne, who only made 3 league appearances for Chelsea. Who's widely regarded as one of the best midfielders to ever play in the Premier League. We're missing out on this scenario. And it's just clear cut what we need is somebody that's capable to move and score goals and put it in the net. And I'm sick of it. I'm really just sick of it. It's just become so boring and so monotonous that, it's like, what's the thing you say? If you don't learn from history, you're just doomed to keep repeating yourself. And this just seems like it doesn't matter the ownership, towards the back end of it, with Roman, we were buying these type of players. And now with Bowley, it's just all the time. It's this, okay, we want to try and build these up, get as much money as we can for them and sell them to Real Madrid, sell them to, not Barcelona, they're poor. Sell them to Real Madrid, sell them to Bayern Munich, sell them to these big clubs and come in and make these big offers, PSG. And it's, to me, it's a backward step. I don't think we are the club that should be doing that scenario. Like, if you want to do that and invest heavily in youth, like, surely Bowley should have been looking at a club that's would greatly warrant that level of investment. Maybe it's a bit. What's the word I'm looking for here? I can't even think of the word. but maybe it's a bit knobby. That's probably the best way I can say it. But a team like Everton, reported the losses of 350 million. They've got a new stadium coming in. They're going to want to fill that with superstars. Like, they would value that investment and bringing those players in and spending £1 billion on players, and then potentially selling them on. A lower level club would appreciate a lot more than Chelsea. And I think since Bowley's taken over the Clear Lake Capital, I think it's a big step back in terms of the mantra, unless he's saying, okay, well, we're actually going to keep these players because sod selling them on. We want to be in 5 years' time the best team in the Premier League, the best team in Europe. Realistically, the way we stand at the moment now is it's not going to be that way, is it? Because yes, they're on 9-year deals. They're all on stupidly long deals, but do these players want to be here for 8-9 years? Really?
I think the more the paradigm changes and, the other clubs invest more, look more serious in terms of like keeping their squads together and, pushing for titles, the more you do get, like Charlie said, mercenaries, people who are just here to pick up a pay packet or here as a stepping stone sort of thing. You won't see the best version of X player or Y player. You won't see the best version of Enzo Fernandez. You won't see the best version of Moises Caicedo, whoever. And 3-4 years down the line, they're playing. They do what some of our players have done. We've seen Kovacic leave for City, Havertz even leave for Arsenal. Although we may have been frustrated or not seen the best of them here, realistically, they've gone up a step in a sense. They've left at the perfect time and bettered themselves for their career to play at the top level. And it's sad to say, because we all saying we're so much better off without them. Yes, that may be true, but they've kind of strengthened their rivals and bettered themselves as a career, as a footballer, I would say. And we've sort of now
it's increased the opportunity to win things.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was trying to say. And you look at us; we've invested a lot in young players who've never done really much in the game. So it's like we've almost pushed the button back to square one, where we're thinking, okay, well, now we've got all these young, hungry players, but none of them have any experience in winning anything. How are they supposed to get up to winning something when your best, like I say, one of your best attackers is inconsistently consistent? How is that going to help them believe that they're here at a club that are going to be winning all the time? Because when you're at the top level, you need someone who's going to be on it every single week, every single time. As you've seen in the past, when Mikel was a youngster, he mentioned it. Training sessions were harder than games. He said when they went into a game on the weekend, it was easier than the training sessions, because the training sessions were really where the games were. Like, the players were competing so much against each other that it was so intense. Weekend was just like another day, and they were planning their nights out, before kickoff or whatever, and knowing that the other team, they'd already beaten them. And I think your likes of your Arsenals and Man Cities are probably the same. They're probably the same. With, we've done this before, guys. We play at such a high intensity. We know the opposition won't be able to cope with us, and I think we just need to do something to get to that level. Do I believe that's going to be under Pochettino? Not quite, but could he head us in the right direction? Maybe so. But
the problem is like, could it be Pochettino, or maybe so? Is he the person? Not quite. But who do you then bring in at that stage? Realistically, we've cycled through managers like they're going out of fashion. Like this, we've tried the whole with Clear Lake. We've gone with an up and coming manager in Graham Potter, one that's widely revered. Like, I know it didn't go well, but Graham Potter is widely revered by footballers. They like playing for Graham Potter. It didn't look like it when he was in charge of Chelsea, but there is no manager really that we can go for in this scenario. I just think it's no fun.
I think it's a collective thing. But
Chelsea fan at the
always
moment.
I will just say, I think it's mainly down to the owners, because even if I imagine Arteta, Guardiola with this squad, they're not doing anything with it. Sorry, but they're just not, because this team is not balanced correctly. This team is not thought out squad. I think a lot of our signings have been, just targets of they're available, they're a big market signing, or they're a good investment piece to sort of buy for now before they go elsewhere. And I think that kind of sums up the makeup of the squad at the moment. Of we'll get all the best players here, but realistically, how is it going to work? And I don't think that's the best strategy to always build a team, because you don't always need the best players. Sometimes you need players who may not be good on the eye or may not have certain qualities, but bring other qualities that help enhance the best players you have.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the kind of the manager situation that's available, there are a few managers that are available that could come in. That
I mean, do you then start looking at Mourinho again?
It's one of those. The problem is like, I think if you were to look at something like Mourinho, I think it's living in the past. I think it is a step back, because Mourinho back in 2003 changed the game. He did. He changed the way managers manage. It was completely different. But now he's still doing that same style 20 years later, and everyone else kind of caught up. Really, so I think Mourinho is probably not an option. But the type of managers that are out there and still available, like if I look through a list, is like you've got the option for a young and up and coming manager, and whether like Ruud van Nistelrooy comes to Chelsea is an option. He did really, really well. Yeah, with PSV, Xabi Alonso is an option, but Xabi Alonso is linked to Liverpool, not necessarily to take over from Liverpool, but he's been rumoured to be taken over from Tuchel for Bayern Munich, which is just boring again for the Bundesliga. But when you look at other like managers that are also available as well, you got Hansi Flick. The options there for Hansi Flick to come in through. Yes, has he got like a good record? Yes. A recent record in terms of like how he does things? No, not so much.
And
you got Julian
Lopetegui falling out of players as well. So
yep, which is perfect. You got Lopetegui as well. I'm sure I pronounced that right, but he's former Spain manager, former Real Madrid manager, Wolves. He's still living in Wolverhampton currently at the moment. Poor sod. I've lived in Wolverhampton for 3 years, and the sooner you can get out there, the better. He might jump at the chance, but you still got players like managers like Antonio Conte. Like, is a Conte return on the cards? Like, could that be some of that? Is that an option? Because let's face it, like Antonio Conte, he did win a Premier League with Chelsea in recent memory. He's the last manager to win a Premier League with Chelsea. He got a tune out of Victor Moses when everyone thought his career was finished. But then there's also Zinedine Zidane as well. So there are options out there, but I don't think Zidane speaks English, so that severely limits things like that. But we're digressing a little bit away from Chelsea Brighton preview, but. When we look at the Brighton squad, they've got a lot of suspensions. Mohamed Dahoud suspended, Lewis Dunk suspended, Matoma's injured, Incenso's injured, Tarek Lamptey's injured, Ansu Fati's injured, Percival Estepanon is injured, Danny Welbeck is injured, Solomon March is injured. But we learned from Saturday it doesn't make a blind bit of difference. The key is Chelsea and how they turn up. I was surprised that we didn't see Christopher Nkunku in the squad. I genuinely thought he'd probably be on the bench in this scenario. But do you see that Nkunku is probably going to be involved in the matchday squad this weekend?
Yeah, I could potentially see that. He'll probably get 10, 15 minutes max. I think it's a bit, like I say, it would be a bit of boost of confidence. But again, I don't want to get carried away, because like we've seen, we can win 2 games, lose 2 games, draw 2 games. So really, it's about just keeping that consistency. In terms of Brighton themselves, what I'm really impressed about, they can change 11 players and still play the exact same way, and you won't notice a single player's gone off the pitch. You've seen with Evan Ferguson, sometimes he switches out for Danny Welbeck, and although Danny Welbeck may be old and whatnot, he'll still score a goal.
He seems to perform against us.
Yeah. And
he performs against.
Thank God he's out. But don't sleep on Evan Ferguson, because we know how good he is as well. They have other brilliant players, Billy Gilmore.
João Pedro's on form as well. He scored 2 at the weekend. Was it 2 at the weekend? And then you got that player Simon.
Oh,
Ndigra.
yeah, yeah,
He's coming as well. He's joined very recently, and he's hit the ground rolling. Like he's the ground running. That's the
running.
word.
And
He's hit the ground running.
yeah, and Brighton are the best sort of team that can suck you in and just play out from the back. They know how to do the simple side to side passing, and really sort of box themselves in to create a bit of space and just hit you very quickly on transitions. And I think it's something we need to learn defensively. What I've noticed is when we press, the spaces between midfield, attack, and defense can be just got at so easily, so easily. And we're not compact enough when we go as a team to press, because I think what ends up happening is you'll get like 2 or 3 players in like really stretched positions, and we don't like having organized pressing, so it's easy to play around us. And once you do that, our midfield isn't good enough to sort of stop you in transition, and then it's just a straight run at our back four. And again, our back four, they don't really like to put in tackle straight away, as we've seen. It's going to be a silly yellow card foul, or you pretty much getting a shot away, as we've seen against with Kulusevski, we've seen against Burnley, we've seen against even Man City. I think we do need to do something about that defensive structure in transition.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting when we host Brighton at the weekend. We'd like to keep this for now, and we've gone slightly over. But what do you think we're looking at the weekend in terms of scoreline? Are you realistically, Brighton were on a bad run of form, I think, recently in the league, particularly, but they weren't at the weekend. But Brighton, last time they came to Stamford Bridge, pulled our pants down with that goal from Enciso. I was more confident going into the Newcastle game, bizarrely. But this time, I think that's just recency bias. I think we're probably gonna. I think the most we're gonna take away from this is a point in the grand scheme of things. I can't see us winning it. I mean, if Evan Ferguson turns up and he's Evan Ferguson of what they want 100 million plus, and Chelsea are looking at Evan and Ferguson as well, another player that we're gonna try and steal from Brighton. Honestly, they must be laughing at us by now. I don't understand why he didn't just buy Brighton. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just buy Brighton. Just take it off of him. Like, just say, hey, here's £4 billion. Can I have Brighton Football Club, please? I'm gonna say 1-1 draw.
Yeah, I think 2-2. And a funny stat I saw, I think Brighton are the only team who have scored and conceded in their last 15, 16 or 17 games. So they set a new record by doing that. And I don't see that changing against Chelsea, because, again, we're notorious. Well, we've conceded, 8 in the last 2 games, 9 in the last 3. So I think we will concede, but I also do see us scoring a goal. I don't think we're that bad, and we seem to have hit a bit of a patch of now actually getting goals. So I would back Sterling to grab 2, and maybe at Ferguson and one of their other players to get an equaliser. But yeah, I think 2-2 is the most logical scoreline.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see when we host Brighton on Sunday at 2 p.m. Tem, thank you very much for joining us. As ever, this is the We Talk Chelsea podcast. We are live on TKS TV. If you have found us this evening, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We will be back next week at 9:30, hopefully with the return of Mr. Charlie Harris as well. Temba, see you next week. To everyone else, thank you very much. Take care. Good night. Up to Chelsea.
Peace.